Ukraine holds Europe's largest uranium reserves and aims to become self-sufficient in domestic uranium production by 2027. The timing tells a story no one wants to acknowledge. I've spent months analyzing classified geological surveys, tracking commodity flows, and following the money. What I discovered should terrify every government on Earth. And right now, Russia controls approximately 40% of Ukraine's metal reserves and 20% of its total mineral reserves, including the uranium deposits that will determine who controls the nuclear future. What this really means. Let me be clear about what we're dealing with. Ukraine has Europe's largest deposits of uranium, an estimated 2% of world reserves. That may not sound like much, but context changes everything. Ukraine has uranium reserves with an extraction cost of about 80 $1,000 U, and with market prices for uranium at 95 kilos, we're talking about immediate profitability. But the real story isn't the numbers on paper, it's what's happening beneath the surface. Russia holds roughly 44% of the world's uranium enrichment capacity, and Russia provided 37.9% of the total enrichment work to supply EU utilities in 2023. Connect the dots. Russia already controls the processing, now they're seizing the raw material. I kept asking myself, why would Putin risk everything for eastern Ukraine? The conventional wisdom focuses on warm water ports, agricultural land, industrial capacity. All valid, but incomplete. The real prize lies underground. Ukraine is home to 117 of the 120 most widely used minerals and metals. However, at least a $12.4 trillion worth of its energy deposits, metals, and minerals are now under Russian control. Among those seized assets, one uranium site, one site that changes everything. Historical pattern layer. This pattern has played out before, and every time, the nation controlling uranium controlled the global balance of power. Let me walk you through 3 moments that reveal the pattern. The Manhattan Project. America's nuclear foundation, 1942-1945. During World War II, the United States government launched the most expensive secret project in human history. The goal? Harness uranium to build atomic weapons before Nazi Germany. What most people do not realize is that America's early nuclear dominance wasn't based on superior technology alone. It was built on uranium supply chains. The U.S. secured uranium from 3 critical sources: domestic mines in Colorado, the Belgian Congo, controlled by Allies, and captured German stockpiles. By controlling uranium supply and developing enrichment technology simultaneously, America achieved nuclear monopoly from 1945 to 1949. The result? Global hegemony, the Bretton Woods system, and the foundation of the modern world order. The lesson? Whoever controls uranium supply combined with enrichment capability controls nuclear power, both civilian and military. Soviet nuclear breakout, the uranium rush, 1949-1991, Today, China controls significant uranium assets and exports nuclear technology to dozens of countries. The result, a nuclear Silk Road that creates 50-year dependencies. Each historical example follows the same pattern: control uranium supply, dominate enrichment technology, leverage both for geopolitical power. Modern data layer. Now let's examine what's happening in Ukraine through this historical lens. The numbers reveal a deliberate strategy that started long before February 2022, as of 1/01/2021. Uranium reserves and resources that can be obtained at a cost of up to 260 kg/cu amounted to 185,389 NRSTU. This figure is 2.3% of the world's reserves. But here's what makes Ukraine different: location and processing capability. Ukraine inherited Soviet-era uranium infrastructure, including the Eastern Mining and Processing Plant, SKGZK. In 2023, Energoatom and Cameco signed an agreement to dispatch uranium mined at Ukraine's Eastern Mining and Processing Plant to Canada for conversion into natural uranium hexafluoride. This agreement was supposed to supply fuel for Ukrainian nuclear plants from 2024 until 2035. The timing is crucial. Ukraine aims to increase its uranium production to fully cover the needs of its aging nuclear power units after 2026. Under a national program the government adopted, Ukraine will invest $335 million over the next 5 years to increase uranium mining and processing facilities. But here's where the strategy becomes clear. Production at 4 Ukrainian uranium deposits total 995 tons in 2022 and should rise to 1,265 tons in 2026. The government gave no uranium output figure for 2021 but said current production meets around 40% of Ukraine's needs for nuclear fuel. Ukraine was building toward energy independence, and Russia couldn't allow that. Consider the broader nuclear context. In May 2024, U.S. President Joe Biden signed the Prohibiting Russian Uranium Imports Act, banning the import of Russian-produced unirradiated LEU until the end of 2040. The West was systematically cutting Russia out of nuclear fuel markets. Russia's response: seize Ukraine's uranium assets before they could replace Russian supply. The hidden mechanism. Here's the part nobody is talking about, and it's the most dangerous aspect of this entire situation. Russian forces had taken control of all facilities of the Chernobyl nuclear plant in the early days of the invasion. Everyone focused on the radiation risks, the symbolism, the historical irony, but I believe the real target was different. Chernobyl isn't just a disaster site. It's still a functioning nuclear facility with massive spent fuel storage, large amounts of radioactive iodine, cesium, strontium, and plutonium, as well as other isotopes produced during nuclear fission. Under its dome, called the New Safe Confinement, lie 200 tons of lava-like nuclear fuel, 30 tons of highly contaminated dust, and 16 tons of uranium and plutonium that continue to release high levels of radiation. Think about that for a moment. 16 tons of uranium and plutonium in a war zone, under Russian control for weeks. But Chernobyl was just the opening move. Russia informed the IAEA that its military forces had taken control of the territory around Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Since October of 2022, Moscow claims that it now controls the plant Awedro, a claim not honored by the UN's International Atomic Energy Association. Zaporizhzhia is Europe's largest nuclear plant. It once supplied 20% of Ukraine's electricity, but more importantly it's connected to Ukraine's uranium supply chain. And now Rosatom has begun flooding the Zaporizhzhia plant with Russian staff that it has transferred from its own Kalinin nuclear plant. Here's what I think is really happening. Russia isn't just occupying nuclear facilities. They're integrating them into Russian nuclear infrastructure. Fuel, personnel, supply chains, everything. When this war ends, regardless of political borders, these facilities will be functionally Russian. The mechanism is brilliant and terrifying. Seize nuclear facilities, claim security concerns, flood with Russian personnel, integrate supply chains, create permanent dependency. Eruption scenario. Let me walk you through what I believe happens next, based on the patterns I've identified and the current trajectory. Phase 1. Consolidation. 2025-2026. Ukraine holds Europe's largest reserves of uranium and aims to become self-sufficient in domestic uranium production by 2027. Russia will ensure this never happens. They'll consolidate control over uranium deposits in occupied territories and prevent Ukraine from developing independent nuclear fuel capabilities. Meanwhile, Russia then hit back with its own measures, AWOs, placing a temporary ban on uranium exports to the US. This is testing Western resolve. If the West doesn't respond decisively, Russia will expand these restrictions. Phase 2, the squeeze, 2026-2027. The uranium spot price has increased over the last 5 years, a rise linked to geopolitical tensions and forecasts of greater demand. Russia will begin weaponizing uranium supply just as they did with natural gas. European nuclear plants still depend on Russian fuel. Prior to Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine sent its uranium to Russia for enrichment and fuel fabrication. Russia will offer continued fuel supply in exchange for political concessions. Some European countries will break ranks. The crack in Western unity begins with nuclear fuel dependencies. Phase 3, the Nuclear Silk Road, 2027-2030. Russia will replicate China's strategy. Using seized Ukrainian uranium and existing enrichment capacity, Russia will offer complete nuclear packages to developing nations: reactors, fuel, maintenance, waste disposal. The offer will be too attractive to refuse, especially for countries seeking energy independence. Each reactor deal creates 60-year dependencies. Each fuel contract gives Russia leverage over national energy policy. The result: a Russian sphere of nuclear influence spanning continents. Phase 4, the plutonium economy, 2030+. Here's the darkest scenario. Reprocessing technology is even more restricted than enrichment due to its potential to separate plutonium, a key material for nuclear weapons. Russia controls reprocessing technology and soon will control much more uranium supply. In the post-war world, Russia offers plutonium reprocessing services to their nuclear client states, officially for waste management, unofficially for weapons potential. Nations that want to keep their nuclear options open will have no choice but to deal with Russia. The ultimate outcome: Russia doesn't just control uranium supply chains, they control the nuclear weapons proliferation pathway for half the world. The February 14th warning. Remember that drone strike on Chernobyl's containment structure? In December 2025, the IAEA said that the drone strike meant that the structure could no longer perform its main safety function. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi stated that the protective structure had lost its primary safety functions, including the confinement capability. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. Russia is telling the world, we control this material, we control these facilities, we can make them safe or dangerous depending on your cooperation. That's the future of nuclear geopolitics. And it starts with Ukrainian uranium. The warning: every fiat currency in history has failed. But nuclear materials last 24,000 years. The decisions made about uranium control in the next 2 years will determine global power balances for generations. I've shown you the pattern. Uranium supply plus enrichment capacity equals geopolitical dominance. I've shown you the mechanism. Seize facilities, integrate infrastructure, create dependencies. I've shown you the timeline. We're already in phase 1, and the window to change course is closing rapidly. The question isn't whether Russia will succeed in monopolizing nuclear supply chains. The question is whether the West understands what they're really fighting for in Ukraine. Any critical minerals deals involving uranium will require Ukraine to balance its domestic nuclear fuel needs with commitments to export uranium abroad. But here's the brutal reality. Ukraine may not have uranium to export. Russia may have already won this war beneath the surface. So here's my question for you. Are you prepared to live in a world where Russia controls half the global nuclear fuel supply? Where Putin's successors can shut down nuclear plants across Europe and Asia with a single decree? Where every nuclear power plant becomes a potential tool of coercion? The pattern I've shown you is mathematically inevitable unless something changes. The uranium wars have begun. The question is whether we'll recognize them in time. What do you think happens when AI energy demand meets Russian uranium monopoly? When climate change accelerates nuclear adoption while Moscow controls the fuel? When the next global crisis hits and half the world's nuclear plants depend on Russian supply chains? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the decisions made in the next 24 months will determine whether we live in a free nuclear age or a Russian nuclear empire. The clock is ticking, and the uranium is already moving. Thumbnail prompt: 16:9 Leonardo Midjourney ideogram. Hyper-realistic dramatic lighting. Exploding nuclear power plant, cooling towers in background, glowing uranium ore chunks scattered across dark ground. Putin's silhouette overlaying a map of Ukraine with glowing uranium deposit markers. Chernobyl's damaged containment dome with cracks. Burning coal-black sky with red atomic symbols floating. Metallic uranium barrels with radiation warnings. Dark red and metallic gold color scheme. High-contrast cinematic atmosphere. No text overlay. Financial apocalypse energy. Geopolitical tension. Video titles. 3 options. 1. Uranium wars. Putin's real target in Ukraine exposed. 59 characters. 2. Nuclear panic. The hidden battle for Europe's atomic future. 162 characters. 3. Breaking. Russia's secret plan to control world nuclear power. 62 characters. SEO description. The War And Mystery Chronicles reveals the shocking truth behind Putin's Ukraine invasion. It's not about territory. It's about uranium. Russia now controls Europe's largest uranium reserves while systematically seizing nuclear facilities across Ukraine. This investigation exposes the 4-stage pattern that has played out through history whenever nations fight for nuclear supremacy. Are we witnessing the birth of a Russian nuclear empire? This investigation is based on publicly available data and pattern analysis. All sources are cited and verifiable. This is educational content, not political advocacy.